chat window as well. A bunch of ones, a bunch of threes, one or threes. Yep, absolutely. And what we're finding is it's exactly that. There's a lot of people that are actually clicking the link and going in and immediately losing trust from who they perceive is sending that request in. I can't tell you how many times. I mean, I'm sure everyone here has received fraudulent message. I've lost my license and had so many parking tickets from the government so many times at this point. It's quite fascinating. But if we dive into this use case a little bit further, we look at in today's world of AI, it can be text messages, but it can also be voice calls using AI bots, which are getting incredibly sophisticated, right? And so we think about, we ask ourselves, as an organization, how do you respond to that? What do you do to prevent this kind of situation in the future? How do you want these communication, like how do you want to actually communicate with your stakeholders, in this case, citizens, right? Or backend teams. So give us a minute to think a little bit. And then some stats associated with that, just to give you an idea, there were about 4 billion robocalls that were received by individuals per month in the US. Now, of course, many of those were legitimate, but a large number were also fraudulent as a part of that. And you can imagine how many of those have resulted in either data loss or financial loss and so on. To the point where now it's become so common that 70% of people are no longer answering calls that they don't recognize. Now there are actually tools available on Android and iOS that block any call that is not in the contact list, which is making it a huge issue for, legitimate callers to come through. And this stat is very interesting. It's not a negative stat. It's a deliverability stat. So 98% of people that receive an SMS message actually open that message. And so it's a good thing and a bad thing, or a good thing and an area to consider, because the good thing is if you send an SMS, people will read it. 98% of people will read it. The challenge that comes to that, though, is that now anyone who receives that message, such as parking tickets, becomes a much larger attack vector. And now you have the ability to really think about and figure out how to build that trust with the people that you're communicating with today. So another question for the group, and this is meant to be an activity. So please, if you'd like to come off mute to answer this question or type it in the chat, that's perfectly fine as well. Excuse me. Citizens are told to avoid answering messages and calls from unknown users, either for fear of fraud or some other reason. If you're an agency that's reaching out to citizens in that moment of need, how do you differentiate yourself from those bad actor communications? So I'll give you a minute to think about that and be thoughtful about it. And what kind of things would you do to make yourself more unique? We'll give it about a minute. And also anyone that wants to come off mute to talk about that, that's perfectly fine as well.
So while folks are thinking, I just have to jump in because this resonated so well. I used to work for the Colorado Information Analysis Center in the cyber unit. And so I would see threats come across and want to share information with local businesses that had signed up, et cetera. But it is the weirdest, most awkward conversation to start with. Like, we have no way to connect with each other, but hi, I'm from this agency you've never heard of. By the way, there's an alert and a threat to your cyber system, and this is what it is. And it was like, this was such a challenging thing to try to do, because then I'd have to try to explain what we were, who I was, and give them like a number so they wouldn't feel like it was totally invalid. So this is a great question, and really, like I said, resonated with me. Might have brought up a little bit of some PTSD, but yeah, it's great.
Yeah, that's exactly the point, Maddie. It's what we're seeing both on the commercial side and on the public sector side is people are inbound communication is a little bit easier because you can get that from a verified source. You can see that, hey, on their website that they know, it has their name on it, logo, and so on. Not necessarily foolproof, but much better from the perspective of knowing who you are reaching out to and speaking with. I'm much more comfortable providing my contact information or my personal information to someone that I've called because I'm the one doing the calling. I'm nowhere near close to that when someone tries to call me. I'll give you an example. A couple months ago, I was called by Amazon that I had a $500 charge, and if I wanted to authorize it to let them know the last four digits of my credit card number. These are the kinds of things that are happening every day. So we have one answer: follow same rules and standards as never ask that.com. Very good. It needs a verifiable intro like a stamp on .gov website. Yes, absolutely. And I guess the question becomes when it comes to communication, what can you do? And so the industry has come up with some options, that are available to be able to address some of those concerns. Absolutely right. Do not include URLs in text, unless that text is from a verified source. And that's what we're going to be talking a little bit about today. So the approach that you can take is a crawl, walk, run model when it comes to providing a trusted level of identity. There are easier things that you can do to enable it on the communication side, and then become more and more advanced, as time goes on. So today we're going to be focusing a little bit more on the crawl because we have 10 more minutes left. And but there are walk and run areas that are really important in this day and age, especially, we've been talking about AI, and so we'll dive into a little bit of that because I think it's important for people to understand that identity for an AI agent is also very important. You have myriads of we'll get into that. The first part I want to talk about is branded calling. So this is a functionality where citizens can see the organization's name during the incoming call, and a logo from that organization as well. Excuse me. And that use case as to why they're calling. So these are pieces of information that are included as a part of when the call arrives. This is available in the US on 2 of the 3 major carriers. And so this is something that can be enabled to facilitate that kind of connection to establish that, someone is calling in from a particular municipality or a particular state. RCS is a similar thing, but for messaging. And so this one is also really important. And in both of these cases, you have to register the organization and let them know the reason why you would be reaching out. So it's not just enough to register the number to the department. It's also about registering why you would call them or reach out to them on that number. And that comes up on the screen of that citizen, so they know why the interaction is coming in. So because there's a large level of registration required, along with an image of your organization. On the RCS side, you also have a large number of additional things like being able to have read receipts, send files, things of that nature. All of that is available on that channel. But in this scenario, the important part is the trust factor, right? They know who is reaching out to them. Excuse me. Now, on the flip side, if you need to know who you're speaking with, you also have two-factor authentication, right? So this is a mechanism where it's essentially either two devices, either something that you know, and then something that you have. So it's a password, you've authenticated with some sort of a PIN, and then you send them some sort of a notification or a call back to be able to respond back. And that's your two-factor level of authentication to guarantee that or that the registered devices that are against that person they've authenticated against. Now, there is a different other kind of technology service which can be lumped under this umbrella of know your customer, or KYC. And so this is a series of technology and processes that ensure that the citizen's identity, or ensures the citizen's identity through either an active or a passive or silent, through active or silent mechanisms. So things like making sure that the person that is calling, their name that they say that they are, aligns with a lookup through the carrier, right? So these are, as an example, that's one example of that mechanism. Making sure that they haven't transferred a SIM card from one phone to another, and then making the call, acting as that other person, things like that. So these are really easy things to implement within your environments to quickly add a pretty high level of trust within when citizens are speaking with your organizations, or vice versa. Now, I want to quickly touch on walk and run. A key part of that, trust on the channel gets elevated even further once you're speaking to a human. And so having an agent that has all the data from the various parts of the organization and being able to speak to that when they're talking to that citizen is also going to be very key, because it provides a level of trust, once again, that the citizen or that the agent knows who they're talking to from the various parts of various levels of government, or various parts of the government. And then on the run side, we were talking a little bit about this. We've talked about the authenticating the citizen, making sure that the citizen is aware of who's reaching out to them, making sure that the human agent knows that the information that they need. But now, in this world of AI, does it make sense to have an AI agent have complete access to all of the data for a citizen, or for all citizens, when one citizen calls in, right? Does that make sense? Most likely not. And so providing rules of access to that AI agent to only access that citizen's data, or specific parts of that citizen's data, to satisfy a use case, is the more relevant goal. And so having your AI agents do authentication is a key part of this as well. And then also looking for dynamic authentication, being able to revoke access, provide access in real time, as the use case completes. So these are very important sort of metrics that we want to look at as we are going into as we go more and more advanced into our use cases with AI. One more question for the group, and I know we're getting close to time, so excuse me. I want to make sure that we go through some of these. So if a citizen's contact information changes, such as a new phone number, what mechanisms do you have today that ensure that you're not reaching out to someone else accidentally, with the previous owner's number? Do you have a mechanism in place right now within your environments? So that's a key thing to think about. And then, we talked about having citizens of different technological prowess, for lack of a better term. Is the process of proving I am who I say I am so have such a high friction that some vulnerable members of your community are not able to get that service? And what kind of service can you provide in exchange for the most common one that you rely on? So some future ideas as well, thinking about, how do your agents access citizens' data today? Do they have access to everything? Who grants that access in that moment? Is it dynamic based on requests? So these are other questions that you need to think about as well. Should AI agents have access to all citizen data? If AI is spanning across organizations, how do you maintain control? How do you maintain audits? So for this last one, actually, I'd love for someone to actually answer that. Does anyone have an idea on this first part?
I do. Can you hear me all right?
We can, yes, Rob. Go ahead.
There's a segment that I like the hospital uses here where once you go in and make an appointment, you set up an account, and then that account is direct messaging, and you have MFA to contact anybody there on all your communication. I love that.
That's perfect. That's such a good utilization of making sure that you know who you're talking to when you're booking an appointment, changing an appointment, all of that. And all of that can be automated in AI as well. And so now you want to make sure that all of those security mechanisms that you're providing, as you're providing it from the human agent side, are also replicated as you move some of those use cases to automation. Yeah, that's JJ. That's a really good way to do it as well. If they're logging into an account, making sure that they have your like the number and address is up to date. A lot of banking applications do that today to make sure that registration information is up to date and so on. So that's a really good call out as well. What about back-end tasks? Is there a way to do it via I have something similar. Have you ever been associated with this address, this car, this workplace? Exactly. Yes, absolutely yes. So yeah, thinking about backend tasks like silently doing some levels of authentication. Any other ideas on how we could do something like that, where you don't necessarily have to engage the citizen in order to validate information, or engage the citizen only when that information has been found as invalid? Okay, perfect. So again, some things to think about. I know we're hitting time, so I'll just quickly go over these last few areas. So in summary, making sure that thank you, Bill. I appreciate the call out there. So in summary, talking about the right technology. So the idea behind this is that it's a journey, right? One part is picking the right technology. Enabling your organizations to have that right technology allows for citizen communication to begin with that level of trust. It'll increase your engagement and ensure a more efficient delivery of service. But along with that, it's also, privacy and internal checkpoints, making sure that it's not a nice to have, but it's a part of every single project as you are going through. And if there's old projects, applying it to those older projects as well. It's not just a checkbox, right? It is an active part of the workflow that needs to be initiated anytime a new engagement is starting with a citizen. And it's an iterative process, right? What we're seeing is, trust is not built overnight. These solutions don't get implemented or will also get implemented over time. And, just as bad actors and fraudsters will evolve, we need to evolve with them. So we built it for today and continue building for the future. Now, something that we've left and will hopefully be distributed as a part of this is a communications checklist. So it's a series of questions to ask within these different levels. So things like identity and consent, message integrity, resilience, privacy. So a series of questions to ask internally so that you can navigate these dynamics and really dive in and understand how you're building trust inherently within your projects and your workflows. Thank you. Maddie, I'll pass it back to you.
No, thank you so, so much. This is amazing. And yes, that resource will be distributed as well as the notes from this discussion. And we really cannot thank you guys enough for taking the time to walk us through that. It just brought so many thoughts and questions, and really, really amazing setup for the next question around AI governance as well. And we just really do appreciate you guys sharing your expertise. And we're excited to get these resources out and jump back into them.